I found out that the Sunnyside Homeowners Group was putting up 96 fancy houses on the farmland I got from my family. But when I showed them my grandpa's old maps of the land, their whole building project suddenly became mine. You should have seen how surprised they were when I told them at their meeting. I never thought I'd have to fight for land that was already mine. When Grandpa Pete passed away last March, I got his 200-acre farm outside of Willowtown. The old farm had been ours for a very long time. I lived in the city, far away, with a busy job, so I didn't visit much. My phone rang early, at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. It was Miss Karen, Grandpa's neighbor for 40 years. "They're building houses on your land," she said, her voice shaking. "Big yellow machines started digging yesterday. You need to come quickly." At first, I thought she was wrong. Maybe workers had just gone over the line by mistake. But Miss Karen wasn't someone who made things up. "The Sunnyside people put up signs," she said. "They're planning almost 100 houses where your east fields are." I packed a bag and drove to Willowtown as fast as I could, even going over the speed limit. 5 hours later, I turned onto the dirt road to Grandpa's farmhouse. It felt strange. The quiet was now broken by the noise of big machines. Dust clouds rose as I went over the hill looking at the east part of the property. My heart sank. Lots of bulldozers and diggers were tearing up the ground where Grandpa used to grow corn and soybeans. Workers in hard hats moved around, marking spots with orange paint. A big sign said, "Future home of Sunnyside East. 96 luxury homes starting at $450,000. I parked and walked to a woman standing away from the workers. She wore clean beige pants and a white shirt, even with all the dust. Her hair was perfect, and she held papers while talking on her phone. "Excuse me," I said when she finished. "What's going on here?" She looked me over like I was trying to sell her something. "We're getting ready to build houses," she said smoothly. "I'm Karen Rogers, president of Sunnyside's Homeowners Group." She held out her hand, but not in a friendly way. "This is my land," I said, not shaking her hand. "My grandpa, Pete Johnson, owned this farm. He died, and I got it." Karen's smile didn't look real. "There must be a mistake," she said. "Sunnyside bought this land last year. We have all the papers and permissions." "That's impossible," I said. "My grandpa would never sell this land." "Maybe he didn't tell you," she said, sounding a little sorry for me. "The sale was done 9 months ago. We've been planning this for years." My head was spinning. Grandpa had been sick, but his mind was sharp. He wouldn't have sold his farm without telling me. Something was wrong. "I need to see those papers," I said. "You can call our lawyers," Karen said, giving me a card. "But I promise everything is okay. Now we have a lot to do." She turned away, dialing her phone. I felt helpless as the machines kept digging up the land that had fed my family for so long. Back at the farmhouse, Miss Karen waited with iced tea and a worried look. "They started showing up with measuring tools about 3 months ago," she said. "Your grandpa was very angry. He kept saying they had no right, that they were trying to steal what was his." "Did he say anything about selling land?" I asked. "Never. Pete said this farm would stay in your family forever," Miss Karen said, her eyes watering. "The day before he went to the hospital, he was looking through his office. He said he needed to find something important to protect the farm." Grandpa's office was untouched. I hadn't been able to go through his things after the funeral. Now, I needed answers. The room smelled of old books. Shelves were full of farming books, photos, and records. Grandpa kept track of everything. Rain, crops, repairs, all written neatly. Where would he keep land records? The filing cabinet seemed like the place to start. I opened it and found folders by year. Nothing about land sales or Sunnyside. Hours passed. Night came, and my eyes were tired. Just as I was about to give up, I saw a loose board under the desk. I pressed it, and it moved. I opened it with a knife. Inside was a metal box. The key was on a nail under the desk. Inside, I found the deed to the farm, Grandpa's will saying I was his heir, and old maps of the property. But most interesting was a letter to me in Grandpa's writing. "If you're reading this," it said, "then someone's trying to take what's ours." My hands shook. Grandpa said developers had wanted his land for years. They'd tried to make him sell, but he always said no. In his last months, someone from Sunnyside came many times, saying he needed a signature for a road, bringing different papers. "I never signed away my land," Grandpa wrote. "If they say I did, it's a lie. Look at the first map from 1910. Compare it to what's at the county now. The truth is in the lines." I looked in the box and found the old map. It showed lines that went much further than I thought. According to this, Grandpa's farm was almost 280 acres, not the 200 in current records. I couldn't sleep. I put the papers on the table, comparing the old map with newer ones. Something strange had happened. The east line had moved, making our land smaller. It wasn't just the area being built on. We owned land where part of the existing Sunnyside was. At dawn, I knew what to do. First, I needed a lawyer. Then, I needed to know what Karen Rogers and her group were up to. If they thought they could steal from my family, they were going to learn a lesson. I folded Grandpa's letter and put it in my pocket. "I won't let you down," I whispered. Karen didn't know she hadn't just messed with a sad grandchild. She'd walked into a trap set by a man who knew what she would do, even from his grave. I didn't sleep. By 8 a.m., I waited outside the office of Robert Thompson, the only land lawyer in Willowtown. His helper looked surprised when I asked for a quick meeting, but she let me in before lunch. "So, you think Sunnyside is building on land that's yours?" Robert said after I explained. He was older than I thought, with glasses and a bow tie. I put the papers on his desk. "These are the first maps from 1910, updated in 1978. Compare them to the current county records." Robert looked at both, tracing lines with his finger. His eyebrows went up. "This is very strange," he said. "According to these, your property goes almost half a mile further east than what's recorded. That would include not just the building site, but also the Sunnyside Clubhouse and about 20 houses built 5 years ago." I finished for him. Robert took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "A problem this big won't be easy," he said. "We need to know how and when these changes happened." He called the county office. After going through many departments, we learned something shocking. In 1984, a small change to the east line was recorded, just 10 feet for utilities. But in 1997, a bigger change appeared, making the property almost 80 acres smaller. There wasn't much paperwork, just a form with a signature that barely looked like Grandpa's. "He would have been in the hospital then," I said, checking the date. "Heart surgery. He couldn't have signed this." Robert looked serious. "That would be cheating," he said. "But proving it after all these years won't be easy." "What can we do?" I asked. "Ask for an order to stop building right away," he said. "Then ask the court to use the old maps. We'll need a map expert to check them." As Robert got the papers ready, I realized I needed more. I went to the county records office and asked for everything on Sunnyside. Hours later, hidden in a corner with piles of records, I found something important. Sunnyside wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a mix of companies. The same 6 names appeared: Karen Rogers, her husband, Thomas Rogers, County Commissioner James Smith, Planning Director Mark Wilson, and 2 others I didn't know. But the most interesting paper was from just 3 months ago. A loan approval for $16 million to pay for Sunnyside East, with the land itself used to guarantee the loan. My land. I took photos and went to my next stop, the Willowtown News. The editor, Tina Williams, had known my grandpa. When I told her I was looking into possible cheating by important people, she was interested. "I can't print things without proof," she said, "but I can look into how this project got approved. It did seem to go very fast." Back at the farmhouse, I found Miss Karen talking to another neighbor, Mr. Jones. When I said Karen Rogers' name, his face got angry. "That woman is why I sold my place," he said. "The group fined me every week for things I planted. I'd been growing those tomatoes for 20 years. Then they said my workshop broke a rule they just made up. The fines kept coming until I couldn't fight anymore." "How many others did this happen to?" I asked. "At least a dozen," he said. "Always for less than it was worth. Always to companies connected to Sunnyside." A pattern appeared. Find people who can't fight back. Bother them with fines. Make them sell cheap, build and make millions. My grandpa was their latest target, but he'd been one step ahead. My phone rang. It was Robert Thompson. "The judge stopped the building," he said. "But be ready. This will get bad." I thanked him, feeling a small win. I drove back to the site. The workers were packing up. Karen's car was still there. She came out on her phone as usual. When she saw me, her face got hard. "Building stops now," I said, giving her the court order. "The lines are wrong." She looked at the paper, her calm breaking a little. "This is silly," she said. "We have all the approvals." "Based on wrong lines," I said. "I have the first maps." For the first time, she looked unsure, but it went away, replaced by coldness. "This will cost you," she said. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Actually, I do," I said. 6 names on lots of business papers. $16 million in loans using stolen land. County people fast-tracking projects they invest in. I hadn't planned to say so much, but her look was worth it. Karen's hand tightened on her phone. "You're making a mistake," she said. "We can be nice. Maybe you'd take a good offer for the rest of the farm? 7 figures. Right away." "Not interested," I said. "Everyone has a price," she said, smiling again. "Think about it. You don't even live here. What do you care about some dirt?" "This dirt has been in my family for 4 generations. It's not for sale." I turned to leave, feeling her eyes on me. She called out, "Commissioner Smith plays golf with my husband. Judge Evans comes to my dinners. You think your order will last? You're nobody here." I drove away, her words echoing. She was right about one thing. I was new here. But she'd missed something. Grandpa hadn't been. He'd lived in Willowtown his whole life, knew everyone, and was respected. And he'd left me more than just land. Back at the office, I looked more carefully. In an album labeled Community Picnic 2018, I found photos of Grandpa with neighbors, business owners, and families who'd known him forever. Each photo had names. These weren't just memories. They were connections, people who might stand with me. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't know. "Parking fine at your property, $500, Sunnyside Homeowners Group." Attached was a photo of my car parked at Grandpa's farm. My own property. This was how it started. The pattern Mr. Jones described. But unlike the others, I knew their game, and I had Grandpa's secret weapon, still hidden, waiting for the right time. As night fell, I sat on the porch where Grandpa used to tell stories. The east fields were quiet now. Machines stopped. But this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, Karen would use her connections. The real fight was coming. What she didn't know was that I'd found more than maps. I'd found papers that didn't just question the changes. They showed who had made them, when, and why. Karen thought she was dealing with a grandchild fighting for land. She had no idea she was facing my grandpa's ghost, who had written down every bad deal and strange approval for years, building a case while they thought he was just a stubborn old farmer. The trap was set. I just had to let them walk further into it. My heart beat fast as I opened the doors of the Sunnyside Community Center. Tonight was the night I'd been planning for weeks. Inside, almost 100 people filled chairs. They talked about new tennis courts and streets, drinking punch. At the front, Karen Rogers stood tall, pointing at pictures of big houses. "Just imagine the pool with its waterfall," she said, smiling. "Our homes will be worth so much more when these new neighbors move in." People clapped. Nobody knew what I had in my folder would ruin their party. I took a breath and walked down the aisle. "Excuse me," I said loudly. "I need to talk about this project." Karen's smile dropped, then came back, faker than before. "We'll take questions later," she said. "This can't wait," I said, stepping onto the stage. I faced the crowd. "My name is Alex Morgan. My grandpa owned Willow Creek Farm for 60 years. "The old property we bought," Karen cut in. "Yes, we're very happy to finally fix that eyesore." Murmurs went through the room. I opened my folder and took out the first paper. "This is the first land map from 1910, I said, "and this is the updated one from 1978. I held up another paper. "According to these, my grandpa's land goes 80 acres further east than what's in current records." I turned to the group leaders sitting behind the podium. I put copies in front of them. "Put simply," I said, "you're building on land that's mine. And not just the new project. 20 homes and your clubhouse are on my property too." The room exploded with voices. People stood up. Someone knocked over a chair. "This is crazy," Karen shouted, grabbing a map. "We have permits. We've sold lots. Building has started." I stayed calm as she got redder. "Your permits are based on wrong lines," I said. "I filed papers to stop all building." Gerald Fisher, a man with glasses who was the group's money keeper, looked at the papers, looking worried. "Karen," he whispered loudly, "these markers match the old creek. They look real." She grabbed the papers. "This is clearly a trick to get money. We'll fight this." "You can try," I said, pulling out one last paper. "But here's something you should know. According to these lines, your house, Karen, is entirely on what is legally my land." The room went quiet. People looked at each other, understanding. 20 families might not own the ground under their homes. A man stood up. "Are you saying we might lose our houses?" Before I could answer, Karen slammed her hand on the podium. "This meeting is over. Everyone out. The board needs to talk." As people left, whispering, a woman touched my arm. "I'm Rachel Winters," she said. "I just put my life savings into a lot in the new section. What happens to me?" I hadn't expected to face the real cost so directly. "I'm not trying to hurt regular people," I said. "This is about fixing a wrong." "Don't listen to her," Karen hissed, suddenly beside us. After everyone else left, she leaned close. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I built Sunnyside from nothing. Nobody takes it from me." Her threat hung in the air as she left. I was alone in the empty room. Through the windows, I could see groups of worried homeowners. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Thompson. "How did it go?" I typed back, "They know now. Get ready for their next move." What I didn't tell him was how scared I felt. I had lit the fuse, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for what would happen. These weren't just houses on a map. They were people's homes and dreams. But they had built those dreams on my grandpa's stolen land. Someone would lose everything, and Karen Rogers wasn't going down without a fight. I woke up to the sound of engines outside my grandfather's farmhouse. Bright lights flooded through the windows. I stumbled to the porch to find 3 white SUVs with Sunnyside Security painted on their doors, parked in a row, blocking my driveway. Men in uniforms stood by the vehicles. One stepped forward, handing me a thick envelope. "Cease and desist notice from the Sunnyside Homeowners Association," he said flatly. You are ordered to withdraw all claims against the development or face legal action. I tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter claiming my documents were fake and that I was attempting to commit fraud. They demanded I pay for damages to the community's reputation. "You can't be serious," I said. The man shrugged. "Just delivering the message. Have a nice day." He returned to his vehicle, but none of them left. I tried to leave for breakfast in town, but discovered they had placed large concrete blocks across the end of my driveway overnight. "Sorry, sir," one guard said, without looking sorry at all. "This access point hasn't been approved by the development committee. It's been closed for safety reasons." I was trapped on my own property. I called the sheriff's office but was told they couldn't help with a civil dispute and suggested I get a lawyer. My phone rang. Karen's name flashed on the screen. I hadn't given her my number. "Good morning," she said sweetly when I answered. "Enjoying the view?" "This is harassment," I said. "You can't block access to my property." "Actually," she said, "according to county records, the real ones, that driveway crosses Sunnyside's common areas. We're within our rights to control access." "You know those records are wrong," I said. She laughed. "Let me explain how this works. The county commissioner plays golf with my husband every Sunday. The building inspector's daughter works for my real estate company. The water department supervisor lives in Sunnyside." I felt my stomach drop as she continued. "By tomorrow, your farmhouse will be cited for at least 15 code violations. Your water might get shut off due to maintenance issues. Local contractors won't return your calls because they know better than to cross me." "That's illegal," I said. "That's small-town politics," she replied. "You can't win this. But I'm reasonable. Drop your claims, sign over the disputed acres, and this all goes away. I'll even throw in a nice payment for your trouble." "This isn't about money," I told her. "It's always about money, dear. Think it over. You have until tomorrow." She hung up. I stared at my phone, then at the security vehicles still parked outside. They weren't leaving. True to Karen's word, by afternoon, a county inspector arrived to examine the farmhouse. He found problems with everything: the wiring, the septic system, the porch railings. He handed me a list of violations that would cost thousands to fix, all needed immediately. As he left, another truck arrived. Workers put up signs along my property line: "Future home of Sunnyside East. Luxury living coming soon." My water pressure dropped to a trickle. When I called the utility company, they claimed there was maintenance work happening and couldn't say when it would be fixed. I tried ordering pizza for dinner. The driver called to say he couldn't find my address, though delivery had never been a problem before. I was being cut off, step by step. That night, I sat on the porch in darkness, watching the security lights sweeping across the fields where my grandfather had once grown corn. Their bulldozers sat silent in the distance, waiting to continue destroying his legacy. My phone lit up with a message from Mr. Thompson. "They've filed a countersuit claiming your documents are forged. Court date set for 3 months from now. They'll keep building in the meantime." 3 months! By then the houses would be half finished. The damage would be done. I scrolled through my contacts, looking for anyone who might help. A name caught my eye: Janet Rivers, a reporter for the local newspaper. We'd gone to high school together. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but maybe. As I considered calling her, headlights appeared on the long driveway. A car carefully maneuvered around the concrete barriers and approached the house. I tensed, wondering what new trouble Karen was sending my way. The car parked, and a familiar figure stepped out. Gerald Fisher, the HOA treasurer who had examined my documents at the meeting. "I shouldn't be here," he said nervously, glancing back at the security vehicles in the distance. "If Karen finds out—" "Why are you here?" I asked. He pulled out a flash drive from his pocket. "Because what she's doing isn't right. I've been keeping the HOA books for 7 years. There are things you should see. I invited him inside, away from watching eyes. At my kitchen table, he opened his laptop and showed me financial records, meeting minutes, and emails. Karen and the board have been using HOA funds like their personal bank account, he explained. Special fees that disappear, contracts that go to family members, reserve funds that get invested inside businesses. Why show me this? I asked. Because I'm not the only unhappy homeowner, Gerald said. Many of us are tired of her rules and her control. When you showed up with those property documents, it was the first time I've seen her scared. He pointed to a spreadsheet. Look at these special assessments from last year. Every homeowner paid $2,000 for road repairs. The actual work cost half that amount. The rest vanished. That's theft, I said. Gerald nodded. And there's more. The 20 homes you said are on your land? The people who live there have been complaining about drainage problems for years. Karen keeps promising fixes, but nothing happens. Now we know why. She knew those houses might not legally belong to the HOA. As we talked, my phone buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. We support you against Karen! The Millers, 42 Sunnyside Lane. She fined us $500 for planting vegetables instead of flowers. Can we help? Jackson family. Our children's playground equipment was removed without notice. We want to join your fight. The Rodriguezes. Gerald smiled slightly. I may have shared your number with a few friends. For the first time since this battle began, I felt hope. Karen had power, connections, and money, but she had also made enemies, many of them. We need a plan, I said, and I think I know where to start. As Gerald left, carefully driving past the security vehicles, I watched a light rain begin to fall on the half-built houses in the distance. Karen thought she was punishing me into submission. Instead, she had just helped me find the allies I needed to win this war. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would stop playing defense. My grandfather always said, "The best trap isn't one your enemy walks into. It's one they help you build without knowing it." Karen had just handed me the final pieces I needed. My water got shut off yesterday. The electricity followed this morning. I stood in my grandfather's kitchen, looking at spoiled food in the warm refrigerator. Karen Rogers thought she could bully me off my own land by making life unbearable. She had another thing coming. I grabbed my notebook and headed out. If Karen wanted war, I needed allies. The first person I visited was Miss Karen, who answered her door in a flowered housecoat. "They shut off your utilities?" she gasped. "That's illegal." "So is building on my land," I replied. "But Karen has friends at the county office. I need to know who else might hate the HOA as much as we do." Miss Karen's eyes lit up. "Oh, honey, grab a chair. This might take a while." She gave me 15 names, families who'd been fined for the wrong color mailbox, elderly couples threatened with liens for having grandchildren visit too often, a single mom who couldn't afford the $900 fee for putting up a small fence to keep her toddler safe. I spent the entire day knocking on doors throughout Sunnyside. At first, people were scared to talk, but when I showed them my property documents, something changed. Hope replaced fear. Sarah Jenkins, whose garden had been forcibly removed, invited me in for lemonade. Karen made my husband dig up our tomato plants because vegetables weren't aesthetically pleasing, she said, hands shaking with anger. "We got a $500 fine. My husband works 2 jobs already." The Patel family had spent $3,000 fighting the HOA over their porch swing. The Johnsons couldn't paint their front door the color they wanted. Every house looked exactly the same, beige with white trim. "It's not just the rules," Trevor Martinez explained, while his wife, Maria, nodded. "It's how they enforce them. Karen drives around taking pictures of violations. Some people get warnings, others get instant fines. There's no fairness. By sunset, I'd talked to 27 families, all with similar stories, all afraid of Karen Rogers. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Thompson, my attorney. "Can we legally form a competing homeowners association?" I asked. "On your land, absolutely," he replied. "But what about the existing homes?" "That's where it gets interesting," I said. "I'm going to need the community center for a meeting tomorrow night." Mr. Thompson laughed. "They'll never let you use it." "They don't own it," I said, "according to my property lines, remember?" The next day I printed 200 flyers. "Emergency community meeting. Your home may be at risk." I included copies of the original property survey. As darkness fell, the community center filled beyond capacity. 97 families showed up. People stood against walls when the chairs ran out. Karen arrived last, pushing through the crowd, her face twisted with rage. "This meeting is unauthorized. Everyone needs to leave immediately." Sarah Jenkins stood up. "Or what? More fines? Haven't you taken enough from us already?" The room erupted in applause. I walked to the front, holding up my hands for quiet. "I didn't come here to cause trouble," I began. "I came because my grandfather's land was stolen. But after meeting all of you, I realized I'm not the only victim." For the next hour, residents shared stories of HOA abuse. Tears flowed, voices shook with emotion. Karen sat stiffly in the back, tapping furiously on her phone. "Here's what I propose," I said when everyone had spoken. "We form the Willow Creek Homeowners Coalition. Together, we negotiate new property lines that are fair to everyone. We create a new community agreement with reasonable rules and transparent finances." "You can't do that," Karen shouted. "These homes are bound by contract to Sunnyside's HOA." I held up the original land survey. "Contracts based on fraudulent property ownership aren't valid, Miss Rogers, but I'm not here to take anyone's home. I'm here to fix what's broken." The vote was nearly unanimous. 89 families joined the coalition on the spot. As people filed out, energized and hopeful, Gerald Jenkins, the HOA treasurer, approached me privately. "There's something you should know," he whispered, glancing nervously at Karen across the room. "The HOA finances, they don't add up. Monthly dues keep increasing, but our reserves are shrinking. I've tried to look into it, but Karen controls all the accounts." I patted his shoulder. "Would you be willing to show me the books?" He nodded. "Tomorrow morning. My office." Karen stormed over, pointing her finger in my face. "You've made a terrible mistake. By this time tomorrow, you'll regret ever coming to Willowtown." "Is that a threat, Miss Rogers?" "It's a promise. I have the county commissioner, the police chief, and the local judge on speed dial. This little rebellion ends now." What she didn't know was that I'd invited a reporter from the Willowtown Gazette to sit quietly in the back of the meeting. Every word had been recorded, every threat documented. As Karen slammed the door behind her, my phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Thompson. "Environmental survey results came in. You won't believe what's on that land." I smiled. Karen thought she had all the power, but Grandpa always said the truth was the most powerful weapon of all. And tomorrow, the truth about Sunnyside's HOA would be front-page news. I woke up to police cars surrounding my grandfather's farmhouse. Through the window, I spotted Karen Rogers standing next to a tall man in uniform. Time to face the music. "You're trespassing on private property," the police chief Andrews announced as I opened the door. I smiled calmly. "Actually, Chief Andrews, I believe you'll find I'm the legal property owner." I handed him a folder containing the original land surveys and my grandfather's deed. "These documents haven't been verified," Karen snapped. "They have, actually." A woman stepped forward from a car I hadn't noticed. "Carolyn Miller, County Records Office. We pulled the original surveys last night after receiving some concerning reports." Karen's face went pale. What reports? I gestured toward the farmhouse. Perhaps we should discuss this inside. Coffee's ready. 15 minutes later, my kitchen table held an unexpected gathering. The police chief, the county records clerk, Mr. Thompson, my attorney, and Karen, whose perfect makeup couldn't hide her growing panic. The original property lines were improperly recorded in 1973, Carolyn explained, spreading maps across the table. This entire area, including the existing Sunnyside homes and the new construction, legally belongs to the Johnson estate. The police chief whistled. That's quite a mistake. Not a mistake, Mr. Thompson said quietly. We have evidence suggesting the boundary change was deliberate. Ridiculous! Karen slammed her hand on the table. This is a scam to extort money from hardworking homeowners. Speaking of money, I said, sliding a folder toward the police chief. Gerald Jenkins provided these financial records yesterday. 3 years of Sunnyside's HOA accounts. As the chief flipped through the pages, his expression darkened. Miss Rogers, can you explain why $427,000 in homeowner dues was transferred to Sunshine Consulting, LLC? That's our legitimate management company, she replied stiffly. Registered to your son-in-law, I added. Along with 4 other companies that charge the HOA for services, landscaping, security, maintenance, legal counsel, all going to businesses owned by your family members. The chief closed the folder. Miss Rogers, we're going to need you to come down to the station. This is absurd. Do you know who I am? My husband plays golf with Judge Harrington every Sunday. As the chief led a protesting Karen out, Carolyn turned to me. What happens now? Those people's homes? I have no intention of evicting anyone, I assured her. But the development needs to stop until we can properly survey the wetlands. By afternoon, construction had halted. Local news vans lined the street outside the farmhouse. My phone rang constantly with calls from worried homeowners. I called an emergency town hall meeting for that evening. The local high school auditorium was the only space large enough. Nearly 400 people packed the room. Existing homeowners, construction workers, now without jobs, county officials, and curious locals. Fear and anger filled the air. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. My name is Alex Richards. This was my grandfather's land. I didn't come here looking for trouble. I came to honor his legacy. Shouts interrupted me. What about our homes? We'll sue! My life savings is tied up in that house. I raised my hands. Please, I'm not here to take anything from you. In fact, I want to offer a solution that benefits everyone. The room quieted slightly. I continued. First, all existing homeowners will receive proper legal deeds to their property. No one will lose their home. Murmurs of relief spread through the crowd. Second, the new development will be redesigned to protect the wetlands that my grandfather cherished. These aren't just swamps. They're critical habitats and natural flood protection for the entire area. I clicked to the next slide, showing Grandpa's environmental studies. These wetlands are home to 3 endangered species. Building on them isn't just wrong, it's illegal under federal law. A man stood up. I put my life savings into a lot in the new section. What happens to my investment? Fair question. We're establishing a property exchange program. Anyone who purchased in the protected area can swap for an equivalent lot in the redesigned development. No one loses their investment. For the next hour, I outlined my vision. A community that balanced homes with nature, transparent governance, reasonable rules, fair fees that actually went toward community improvements. Toward the end, Sarah Jenkins took the microphone. I've lived under Karen's rules for 8 years. I couldn't paint my door blue, I couldn't grow tomatoes. My kids couldn't play outside after 7 p.m. because it violated the noise ordinance. She looked around the room. Is that really the community we want? By the time the meeting ended, we had over 300 signatures supporting the new Willow Creek Community Association. Even some of Karen's former allies joined, including Gerald, who agreed to help untangle the financial mess. The next 6 months weren't easy. Karen hired expensive lawyers who tried every trick to overturn our claims, but the evidence was too strong. She eventually accepted a plea deal on the financial fraud charges. Today, 1 year later, I'm sitting on my grandfather's porch, watching kids ride bikes past houses with doors painted every color of the rainbow. The community garden, where Sarah's tomatoes grow tall, is buzzing with neighbors sharing gardening tips. Behind me, Grandpa's farmhouse has been transformed into our community center. Classes, meetings, and celebrations happen daily. The wetlands are protected by a conservation easement, with walking trails and educational signs explaining the importance of each plant and animal. Miss Karen joins me on the porch, handing me lemonade. "Your grandfather would be bursting with pride," she says, pointing to where construction has finally resumed on the redesigned development, smaller homes, more green space, solar panels on every roof. "I found something while cleaning out his study," I tell her, pulling out a faded notebook, Grandpa's journal from 30 years ago. He fought the original developers back then, too, when they first tried to build on the wetlands. Miss Karen smiles. "He always said you were just like him, stubborn as a mule when fighting for what's right." In the distance, a blue heron rises from the protected marsh, soaring above homes where people now live in harmony with the land. Sometimes, the best trap isn't about catching someone doing wrong. It's about showing them a better way to do right. Karen's HOA tried to steal my land, but instead, they gave me something far more valuable: a community. And I, in turn, gave them back their homes, their freedom, and a future where their children could appreciate the beauty of the land my grandfather loved so much. The Willow Creek Community Association is thriving. We have regular potlucks, neighborhood watch programs, and even a yearly festival celebrating the local wildlife. The lawsuits are all settled. The county officials who were complicit in Karen's schemes were voted out of office. Tina Williams, the newspaper editor, won an award for her investigative reporting on the whole affair. Gerald Fisher, now the treasurer of our association, keeps a meticulous and transparent record of all finances. No more special assessments disappearing into thin air. And Rachel Winters, the young woman who'd been so worried about her investment, she's now my neighbor. Her house, built on a lot outside the protected wetlands, has a beautiful view of the restored marsh, and she's become one of the most vocal advocates for environmental preservation in the community. As for Karen Rogers, she served a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperating with the investigation. She lost her mansion, her reputation, and her power. Last I heard, she was working as a real estate agent in another state, far from Willowtown. I doubt she'll ever forget the lesson she learned here. The concrete barriers that once blocked my driveway are gone. In their place, a small sign reads, "Welcome to Willow Creek, a community built on respect." It's a simple statement, but it represents everything we fought for: respect for the land, respect for the law, and most importantly, respect for each other. Sometimes, I walk through the wetlands at sunset, listening to the frogs and the birds. I think about Grandpa Pete, and how he'd be amazed to see what his stubbornness and his secret box had accomplished. He didn't just save his farm, he saved a whole community from a future it didn't want. He taught us all that even when you're facing someone bigger and stronger, the truth, when combined with a little bit of courage and a lot of community support, can be the most powerful weapon of all. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't just land, it's the legacy of fighting for what's right.